Let's take a look at the book of Job, written by unknown authors somewhere between the 5th and 7th centuries BC. It is a folk tale of sorts, a short one written in prose, with then a long poem, a long reflective poem on that folk tale inserted within it. It asks the question, why do good people suffer? Right? Why do good things happen to bad people? It questions innocent suffering. It also gives us a nice example of the benefits of grumbling in Scripture. So it starts out, just this guy Job, he's just a good guy. And everything's good for him, which is the way that a lot of the ancient people, and still maybe some of us today, at least to a certain extent, think that the moral universe works, right? If someone is rich and prosperous, then they must have done something good, right? If something bad happens to someone, they must have done something to deserve it, right? Well, this was the common understanding of a lot of people on some level, but it was also questioned because there was obviously, we see in life the things that don't fit this pattern. Right? And we have to wonder why are innocent people suffering? Why do good things happen to bad people? So this story kind of brings up that question. And it starts out with Job, and this guy he's got it made. He's a good guy. He's a morally good guy, right? He honored God. He stays away from evil, and then he does pretty well, like in worldly things, like he's rich. Right? He was the greatest man among all the people of the East. He had. He's rolling in it, so to speak. He was loaded. Nice family too. Everything's nice. Everything's good about this guy, right? He is the good man. Right, one day, right, the angels of the Lord are assembling. Right, these are called the sons of God in the more literal translations, and they were like we would call them angels, right, today. And among them is Satan. Now Satan means adversary, and in this story, Satan was a kind of God's prosecutor. Like it was his job to go around, right, and find people who were sinning, find people who were going against God, and then come tell God, and then God would go, do what needed to be done to defend the innocent and all that. So Satan comes in, and God's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I'm doing what I do. What my job is. And God's like, "Hey, while you were patrolling the earth, did you check out Job? Isn't he the stuff? He's great. He's so innocent, doesn't do anything wrong, and he just honors God and stays away from evil." And Satan's like, "Well, yeah, of course he honors God. You put a wall on him, like you protected him, right? You blessed everything he done. Like if anybody whose life was that good, who had so many sheep that they covered the land, right? Of course." I'm sure he loves you. Of course he loves you. Look at his life. So Satan says, if you take all of his stuff, like all the blessings away from him, he'll curse you your face. He won't honor God so much then, right? But God says, no, I don't think so. I think that he actually is a righteous person. It's not just because he's rich, right? It's not just because things have gone well for him in the world, right? It's not just because I've blessed him in that way. Go ahead, you can do whatever you want. All of his stuff, you can take it away, but you can't touch him himself. So Satan does that. He takes all of Job's stuff away. And Job still doesn't curse God, right? His sheep all die, and even his family is taken away from him. And everybody's like, what's going on? He must have done something bad. But Job doesn't curse God. So then Satan goes back to God and he says, well, you let me. Of course he didn't. He doesn't curse you yet because like he himself is still good. Like he lost his stuff, but he still has his health. And like you know that's what's important, right? Like some people are questioning, but it still seems like it's not everything. You let me touch him. You let me afflict him personally, like right on him, not his stuff, not even his family, but you let me hurt him, his body too, right? Then he'll curse you and die. Um, so God lets him do it. And at the end of the story, it just keeps getting worse. And at the end of the story, he's just laying in a puddle of mud, right? He's just laying in the dirt with all these sores and boils all over his body. And he's just gross. The guy's a mess. And his friends come, and that's kind of the poem is mostly his friends, talking to him about this. And they really, they ask like the question that people would ask, but they're really questioning the assumption and the answer, right? So that's like, Job, what did you do? What did you do? Like, why did God take away your stuff? You must have done, and your health. You must have done something awful. And Job's like, no, I didn't. And his one friend just like tells him he's a liar. Like he says, God doesn't let bad things happen to good people. His one friend is just very upset and just turns on Job and just tells him that he's lying and just admit it, say what he did. And Job's like, I didn't do anything. I didn't go against God. I don't know why these things are happening to me. But his friend can't handle that because again, I mean that's if that's your moral structure of the universe, right? And someone challenges that can be really hard for people. That can like really make people afraid. If it threatens like the very foundation, right, that you've kind of based your understanding of life on. If you say no, hey, you always reap what you sow in a simple way. Um, the moral universe is instantly karmic in a very simple and clear way. If you take that away from people, that can really that's some people would fight to defend because it makes them feel safe. It makes them feel secure, like there's some important order in the universe. And if you mess with it, well, as one friend does, just turn on him. One of his other friends like just tells him like, listen, if that's true, Job, if you didn't do anything and God like took away your family and all of your wealth and stuff like that and afflicted you with these boils and this illness and left you here and and also like not to mention like your respect in the community, like everybody thinks that you're terrible now. Like everyone who thought you were so great because you had it all together before, now they all think that you must be the worst person ever, right? Because God took it all away. You must have done something incredibly terrible. And he says, that's true. If you really didn't do anything, right? If you really always honored God and he did this to you or let this happen to you, then you should curse God and just die. Just lay down here, curse God, and just die. Let that be the end of it. And Job says no. He says, I won't. He says, I won't curse God. Even if he curses me, which he kind of has here, I'm not going to curse him. But he does make a demand from God, or a demand to God. He says, God, I demand that you tell me why this is happening to me. And God does give him an answer. God says, God doesn't really give him an answer. What God does is he asks Job if Job was like there when he made the universe. And he just goes through like all the things that God did. Right? He goes through the creation of the earth and of the seas and of the animals and of the plants. He's like, were you this? He's like, basically God's reply is like, oh, you're going to demand that I tell you what I'm doing, right? And what God tells him is like, I'm kind of the guy in charge here, right? Right? He says like, you know, suck up. The first thing he tells him is like, be strong like a man. Gird up your loins, he says, which means like kind of tie up your robe so you can do some heavy work, right? And then he goes on to like, okay, first of all, suck it up, stop grumbling, right? Stop whining, so to speak, and now listen to this. And then he tells him, where were you when I made the earth, right? In other words, I put everything together. I'm in control. I'm God. Did you do any of that? Right? Like, did you make the oceans? Did you make the trees? Did you do any of that stuff? Did you put the sun and the moon in the sky? And did you make the cycles of day and night and seasons and all that stuff? No, I got it. I'm God, right? And so God never tells him why he's suffering, but there is kind of an answer in this, right? He finds a peace in his experience of God. When God, tells him this, shares him with him, it's like he sees God's creative goodness, right? And he sees that God has it all under control, and then he trusts God, right? And isn't that what makes someone, right, a true Israelite, right? Right? Isn't that what makes someone a member of the people of God, is their trust in God's goodness, right? Especially during hard times we see here. Right? So he doesn't get an answer, but he doesn't get an answer like in something he can explain in words, right? It's not like, oh, I'm suffering because of the A, B, and C, right? But he does get an answer that it's okay that he doesn't understand why he's suffering. He can trust God anyway, right? Like Abraham, right? Remember Abraham was like, God was like, hey, go to a new land. He's like, okay, right? He trusted God even though he didn't understand everything. And this is what happens with Job. Surely I talked about things I didn't understand. I spoke of things too wonderful for me to know. Right? Now that's taking us back to what? The tree of the knowledge of good and evil, right? Again, what if Adam and Eve, they didn't trust God, right? So he gets the answer. The answer is trust in God. Right? But again, how does he get it? He gets it from grumbling, right? If he would have been like his friend said, right, and just said, oh, I must have done something wrong, and denied, the truth of his own choices. Or if he had been like his other friend said and cursed God, then he would have been like the Israelites who tried to go back to other gods, right? Deny the revelation, right? Deny the vision that God is good, right? It would have been like slandering the land, right? When the scouts went in and they said, oh, this land isn't good, there's giants there, right? So it's that trust in God. And again, it does come through grumbling. You see, he has a problem, and he's going to tell God to God's face, so to speak. You have to tell me why you're doing this to me. God's like, no, I don't have to tell you why I'm doing this to you, but here I am, right? And he shares himself with him in a way that he's able to trust him. So you can see the grumbling, arguing, the wrestling with God, which is, by the way, what Israel means, right? This is part of the way that God shares himself with the people of God. Again, it's not a blind faith. It's not an obedience. Hey, I said it, you did it, right? But it's a listen up, right? You are open to the questions, and that's what Lofing says makes Israel different, right, from the other nations. That they maintain the true revelation and you rebelled against it. And that's kind of what Job does with his question. But again, it's not a rebellion that dismisses God or refuses to listen to God, right? It's a rebellion that says, I got some questions, right? And then it listens to the response. I mean, it's not ignoring God in the first place. It's going to ask God the question, right? Again, this was Adam and Eve's big mistake. Why didn't they just wait? What could have been a couple hours at the most? From when the snake tempted them to eat the fruit, they could have just waited and talked to God. He said he comes down, in the evenings and chilled with them. So, we do see this kind of answer in Job. It's not, hey, we're going to explain exactly why good things happen, why bad things happen to good people. We're not going to explain innocent suffering in a few cute zingers, right? But that does present the answer to dealing with innocent suffering through trust in God's goodness, right? Even during the rough times, right? You trust that God is taking us to the promised land, even though we're going through the desert, even though we don't know where the water is.